Hey everyone, thanks for watching. Today we're going to be talking about the 7 stages of dropship automation. My name is Travis Merriday. I'm the CEO of Flxpoint. We are a dropship automation platform, and looking forward to sharing some insights on what we see as the several different stages of dropship automation. So with that, we'll go ahead and get kicked off. So let's start with who this webinar for. This webinar is going to be for retailers and resellers, and we'll talk more about the specifics behind that. We'll talk about how not to dropship, right? There's some classic ways that most people start dropshipping, and we're going to talk about kind of the pitfalls there. And then we're going to get into the 7 stages of dropship automation, walk through each individual stage. And actually, we're gonna scrap the live Q&A. I'm recording this and going to be sending it out to our customers, anyone that subscribed to the webinar. Unable to do it live last week, but making it up today. So obviously, for anyone that is joining via just seeing it on YouTube, love to see your comments on the YouTube video. Happy to follow up and answer there. So who is this webinar for? This is for the high volume online retailer / reseller. So specifically, we're going to talk about how to connect and how not to connect with your dropship supply partners. We're going to talk about a lot of the advantages on how to automate these specific workflows. If you are someone that resells products, typically referred to as a reseller or a retailer. We have another webinar. We'll probably be following up more on the supply side for those suppliers who want to provide their products from a dropship perspective. But this is mostly for the online retail reseller. We say high volume because it is about automation. You can certainly start dropshipping in a very manual way. Once you get up to a certain volume, though, automation becomes key. So, if you're high volume already, this is obviously very important, and you might have already gone through some of these steps. If you're looking to be high volume here in the near term, obviously very beneficial to learn some of these automation flows. Also, if you're sourcing from multiple products from multiple locations and/or vendors, so it's big here where sourcing from one specific vendor, automation can help. If you're working with multiple different suppliers, though, it's almost a need to have. It's pretty critical. So if you are doing that, something to think about. Drop shipping, right? So when we talk about drop shipping, we're not talking about retail arbitrage. We're talking about the wholesale drop shipping where you have an approved account with a true wholesaler that offers drop shipping as a service. You're not scraping Amazon and selling on eBay or anything like that. That's different companies, different webinars you might want to watch if that's what you're looking for. We're talking about a retailer or reseller with a direct relationship with a supplier, how to automate that relationship. And then also, if you're on multiple channels, there's not a huge requirement here, but we're going to talk about how to automate, how to optimize that, really because it becomes more difficult when you have multiple channels involved. So we'll dig in there. So how not to drop ship? I like to start with this really because we see it. It's very common. We understand why it starts this way. We want to call it out. Maybe you can kind of recognize that this might be you currently, or you might have been at this point at one stage in your journey. But really, what we see here when it comes to how not to drop ship, it's a process, right? It's you start drop shipping in a way that is very manual. You reach out to your supplier. They agree to drop ship, right? So that's step one. Once again, we're talking about a wholesale supplier relationship that you have as a reseller of their goods. You might be buying wholesale already. You might not have a relationship with them yet or not, but first step is usually you agree to dropship. That part is how you do want to start. But from there, you're probably going to go and you're going to upload the products that they have manually. They probably provide you a CSV or an Excel file, images on Dropbox, whatever it might be, but you're taking these products that you can now dropship. Maybe they're different from the ones you're purchasing wholesale, or like I said, you might be new to the relationship with the supplier, and you're just going to go upload them directly to your sales channel, right? Upload them on your Shopify store, upload them to your central product information management system, whatever it might be, but you're doing a manual upload in bulk, ideally via spreadsheet, but a lot of times individually because it's tough to make sense of the images and how do you get those aligned with the right products, and there might be some difficulty there. And then you place your orders, right? So you've got your products up, you start selling these products in a dropship manner, and then you're going to get your first order. So your first order comes in, you'll then go and log in manually to your supplier's website. A lot of times your supplier requires this, or you didn't invest in the the EDI API or any kind of like technology to do it automatically. Whatever it might be, this is typically what we see. The first time you're drop shipping with a supplier, you're manually placing that. That means copying and pasting the address of the customer into your portal or your supplier's portal. That means manually updating the SKU, adding the SKU that you're buying, and actually checking out via a website. In some cases, not even with a credit card that is saved, right? Manually entering a credit card information and number in each time. So super manual process. We see this is unfortunately a lot of times the only way you might be able to do it with your supplier, at least just starting out. But if you have any kind of success with their products, is obviously not very scalable, and it doesn't become or it becomes untenable very quickly. After you place that order, the other downside to manually placing an order, you don't have a system to actually receive shipment tracking in a way that you can easily get it back to your consumer or any of your customers, really, business or consumer. And that means that you're getting an email typically. If you use your own account, that's great. Your own FedEx or UPS or whatever account, and you're going to get an email about that. If you're using the supplier's account, and they're going to need to forward that email onto you, or provide it to you in some manner. And then you're going to have to then go manually update it into your sales channel, which is that fifth step there. Basically copying and pasting the tracking, marking the shipment as, the order as shipped. And then, ideally from there, your sales channel then sends an email and alerts your customer that it's been shipped. So very common to see this is the flow, how people are getting started drop shipping with a new supplier. As you can see, very manual. So this is not the way to drop ship for high volume sellers. You can definitely start this way, and sometimes it's required, but we're going to talk about how to automate past this if you're stuck in this current stage. So the 7 stages, and these are in order that we see typically from our customers. We've been doing this for 16 plus years. We see how people start to automate their operations. We typically see them in these 7 stages. The first 2 could almost be flipped, and I'll talk a little bit about that. But typically the first thing we do see is people starting to just route orders via email automatically. That means an order comes in, your sales channel or your central management system is able to determine it's a dropship product, and then it routes an order, right? And it sends an email with a PDF attached or whatever it might be, or maybe it's in the body, and says, "Hey, can I order this from you?" That's if the supplier accepts orders, right? The next one is feed file inventory syncing. So this is accepting a file, like an Excel file, a CSV file from your supplier, and starting to sync that with your website so you can have up-to-date quantities. So you're not selling something that is out of stock, no longer available from that supplier in general, whatever it might be, but you're starting to sync that. Some cases you might be syncing the cost, right? If the cost changes consistently from your supplier, each supplier might be different on that. Like I was saying, this could be flipped. It could be a prereq to even start drop shipping, where you need to have the inventory in sync. But we have seen some scenarios where maybe that's not as important, right? You only list things that they have a ton in stock in, or are constantly re-upping. Maybe it's a manufacturer brand or print on demand type scenario where they have everything. This is always in stock. So we put it as number 2 there. But in certain cases, if you're dealing with like a large distributor or high volume items that are moving quickly off the shelf, a lot of times this could be the first thing that you need to do. But we see it's typically the second, we would say, in priority for across the broad spectrum of customers we've dealt with. Number 3, API/EDI PO processing and shipment sync. This is basically moving from an email-based approach of sending your purchase orders to API and EDI, right? Actually placing it directly in their system through some middleware, whether it's EDI protocol or directly over an API, and then getting that, obviously, that shipment sync back through that same protocol. We'll dig in there and the importance there. Moving on now, this is really kind of the game changer kind of step in step 4, or stage, I should say. It's a rule-based order routing. So that is essentially not only just placing the order automatically, like we talk about in the 3rd stage, but routing it and putting rules in place to be able to send that order, which is essentially becomes a purchase order when you order from your supplier in the right manner, in the most efficient, most intelligent, most optimized way for your business. Then you move on to rule-based listing management. We'll talk a little bit more about this. This isn't really specific to dropship, but it does play a part in dropship automation, especially if you've got a lot of differing in costs and changes in data points like that. Be able to list specifically around that. If you're dealing with a lot of different suppliers, making sure you're listing the right products on the right channels that you feel confident. It's common to see that you might not want to list things on one channel like an Amazon, but you want to list it on your Shopify store based on several different rules that might be in place. We'll talk more about that. The sixth stage here, accounting and reporting automation, the toughest stage to get past, usually the last one that everyone tries to, that last hurdle, I guess I should say. We'll really dig on that and the invoicing side of things and reconciling invoices to really understand profitability and reporting. And then true automation. This is basically, the sum of parts is greater. There's greater value than just the sum of parts, I guess, than individually each one of these stages. So talking about what it means to be truly automated and getting data from all these stages and, unlocking a next level really of automation. So let's dig into the first one here, email order routing. So this is basically, like I said, it's fairly simple to do. A lot of systems out there, Shopify for one, as a sales channel, allows you to do this pretty easily. I know Ordoro does too, if you're using Ordoro as a middleware. Obviously, our platform, Flxpoint, does this and much more. But really, when it comes to routing these orders, what we refer to as a sales order or an order from a sales channel, and then what is now considered a purchase order. Even though it's an individual item, whenever we are routing an order from your system or internally to a supplier, we're going to refer to that as a purchase order, even if it's, a single dropship item. Being able to do that on a one-to-one basis is fairly simple, and you can do that with a lot of different software out there. So it's a good first step. With that said, these suppliers, they will need to approve and be able to accept orders via email, depending on which industry you're in. And what supplier, the size of the supplier. This might be very simple. They might be used to receiving email orders. And then some might say, no, you have to actually go to my website. I do not receive it. We don't have a good system of accepting orders via email, or they might require you to do EDI, which we'll talk more about. So, the first step of this is really talking to your supplier, asking them how they currently receive orders, getting an idea of, what's the format. They, ask them for the format. What, do they want CSV? They want PDF? Can they forward you an example order from another one of their customers? You want to keep it in line with what they're used to, really, because you want to make it simple for them, because it's more automated for you now today, but it's still a manual process for them, especially if it's a PDF scenario, which is, interestingly enough, like that's the most common way that we see these purchase orders being sent is via like a attached PDF. They need to now take that PDF and manually enter it into their system and have it fulfilled for you. So you want to make sure you set them up for success, because it is automated for you. It's still manual for them, and they are still going to have a lot of manual processes that are error prone and slow. So you want to speed it up where you can. With that said, a lot of the email order routing, we're going to talk more about the rule-based stuff. It's really only supporting those in the scenario where, let me see if there's another, nope. It's really only supporting those where there is, a very simple structure on, these are my dropship products, these are my wholesale products. So if you're 100% dropship and each one of your suppliers carries different products, you don't have any overlap, you're not dealing with large distributors that might have the same product as another large distributor. If you're just dealing with Nike, Adidas, and Under Armour individually with the brands, they're not going to have overlapping products. When we talk about overlap, right? One product available in multiple, different warehouses or through multiple different distributors or dropshippers. If that's the case, you can easily set that up. If you do have product overlap, if you decide to buy wholesale products that you want to keep in your in your warehouse and get higher margin on those items, and then also drop ship those when you're out of stock, that's what we call product overlap. The same exact product available in multiple different sources. When that happens, this first stage is typically tough to do without really putting together a good system in place, a little bit more enterprise requirements to map inventory together. So we'll talk more about that in a further stage here. But if it's very simply just this product belongs here and this supplier, this warehouse, setting this up is fairly easy and usually the first stage. The next, as I said, can sometimes be the first if you really require it based on the supplier you're working with. But Next step really here is setting up a feed file inventory sync. So once again, it's when you're drop shipping, your network, your suppliers, these relationships, this is who, you have to work with them. You are partners. They have to start, it starts with them on what they supply and how often they supply it. But it's very common for anyone that does drop ship already, any supplier that does, they will supply, whether it's just a daily email that they may have automated on their side, or maybe they manually send it out, or a file located on an FTP, or maybe most commonly what we like to see is like a, just they give you an HTTP link and say, here's our file. We update it X times a day or every day or whatever it might be. And that data is going to change and update and refresh for you. What you're typically going to see here is an Excel file. Like I said, emailed, placed on FTP, given a link, whatever, that has price, the cost of the item for you in some cases. But more importantly, it's usually SKU number and quantity. There's more product data behind that for some of these suppliers that might provide, title, description, category, but at minimum, it's going to be the SKU and the quantity, and sometimes cost, if that changes a lot, or if they're able to set that up and it's more of a generic cost as well. So yeah, that's typically what we're going to see. What you're typically doing there is you're then syncing up. You can do this very cheaply. You don't have to have a more enterprise system like a Flxpoint. You can just go to the App Store and Shopify and just find something that just maps in, those couple data points, for fairly cheaply to do. You're not going to really be able to do a lot of sophisticated stuff, but if you're just interested in syncing those couple data points, you can certainly do that pretty cheaply and pretty easily right out the gate. You're not going to have product overlap management. Like I said, that's a very tough thing for the cheaper software out there to do, to be able to recognize, whether it's automatically or even just manually, the different options you have when it comes to sourcing the inventory. And typically this means that if you don't have that, you're only kind of setting up the syncing for dropship items. So we see a lot of customers come to us and say, hey, I've got the syncing going for my dropship, but if I run out of that, I can only list that product for non-warehoused items, right? I can only take that item and put it up there and say there's 10 in this warehouse. I'm sorry, in my own warehouse, I can only list those items. And if I want to drop ship the item, I can't really aggregate that quantity, right? You can't say I've got 10 in my warehouse and there's 20 in the drop shipper, put 30 up as the quantity. You kind of have to pick and choose where you've got just your drop ship items quantity and just your warehouse items quantity up, in this more simple approach here, to just simply syncing things. So like I said, asking your suppliers, step number one, do you send an inventory feed? Most that are dropshipping already, they're going to know what you're talking about. If you're dealing with smaller companies, we're going to talk more about it here in a second, but really you can also say, well, you don't send an inventory feed. Where do you keep your inventory quantities? Like, where's the record of truth for that? Are we able to integrate that, via API or whatever it might be? That's always a question there if they don't provide what's called a product data file or an inventory feed file. So next, this is depending on your supplier, this could be a requirement in a lot of cases. It also could be not available to you if you're not doing much volume with them right out the gate. But it is a huge step in the right direction. And really this third stage is the first milestone I see in people moving from just very rudimentary, quote unquote, semi-automated flows to an actual automation flow here with, sending your PO, your purchase order, sending it to your supplier over EDI or API to really make sure that that's going directly into their system as fast as possible. There's no human intervention to mistype an address or a SKU quantity or whatever it might be on both your side and the supplier side, and then also be in a system so that you can automatically look for and pull shipping tracking as well. So the downfall of this, obviously, it's typically expensive, or it requires a third party to help kind of build it. There's networks out there. There's our software. There's other software out there that has a lot of this pre-built, or at least makes it easy enough to connect and can act as your advocate, as your technical partner. But it does add a level of complexity, budget, and kind of project management to get these set up. But it is worth it if you're doing any kind of volume, because one, you're going to beat your competitor to the item. If you're selling, reselling an item and drop shipping it, your competitors are also selling that same item. And so if you're sending that order in, that purchase order essentially in, before they are. You're going to, reduce your out of stocks and your stockouts and make sure you get that order in first and capture that sale. And you're also just going to have a more automated business that's going to prevent less errors along the way and keep your customers happy. So with that said, the 850, just to kind of talk some tech talk for you guys that are looking to do this and want to be able to kind of speak your suppliers and kind of sound like you know what you're talking about. Your purchase order is going to be called the 850, right? An EDI talk. Your shipment tracking back, it's an advanced ship notice in their world. That's going to be the 856. Invoice, I say invoice potential here really because not always are you going to be set up or is it going to make sense to do the invoice. But once you do integrate via EDI, now you have the potential to get invoices in. That's going to be your 810. And then the equivalent of the inventory feed, what they call the inventory advice, the potential to get that as well. Once again, that doesn't always mean that just because you set up the order routing that they're going to have this available or want to make it available. In some cases, they don't because of the old school costs associated with an 846, which we can talk more about outside the scope of this really. That 846 is typically going to be your SKU and your quantity. Not going to have all that product data that you might see in other feed files, not going to have cost, all that stuff. It's typically your quantity of your item. So yeah, having all that automated via EDI API is great. A lot of times we see suppliers say, hey, we have EDI or you can integrate via our API, whatever they offer, they might offer both, whatever protocol you prefer or method. But you can't do it until you hit $1 million in sales with us, or you can't do it until you're consistently sending 100 to 1,000 orders, whatever it might be, their limit might be, because it does take resources on their side. It takes resources on your side, right? A lot of times, and it takes the communication to get it set up. So something to ask your suppliers. Don't just go in right out the gate. If you're newer to dropship or, newer to this relationship, assuming that you can do it, but definitely ask. It's part of that conversation in general on how do you accept orders, email, API, EDI, and if they say, well, email, don't assume that that's the only way they do it right out the gate. Do I hit a certain order volume? Are you able to integrate via these methods is always a good follow-up question. All right, now next level up, this is one more as we go up each stage. It's, another layer of complexity. It's another, project really to kind of roll it out and to get it. But once you do take the time to put it in place, it has a ton of added benefits. When you do have high volume orders, right, what you consider high volume for your business, the size of it, the manpower it takes to process these orders, these can be game changers as you level up to each one of these stages. This one certainly, this is the first one, rule-based order routing. So this is essentially going from just the one-to-one kind of relationship we talked about to first time, and I know we're talking about order routing, but for the first time, the prereq of combining the multiple SKUs, that might be sourced from warehouse A and dropshipper B, combining that into a single ID, a single listing SKU, if you will, that knows and is intelligent enough to say that this one product has 10 quantity in warehouse A, a quantity of 20 in dropshipper B. I'm going to list 30. And then once I'm able to list 30 and have that intelligent mapping, when an order comes in from the other direction, right, from the sales channel, when an order comes in, make an intelligent decision on where to route that order. Sometimes in more kind of rudimentary systems, it might just say, here's the preferred one. And once that's out of stock, overlap to the other. And that could work for a lot of different business cases and be fine. And you might not need anything past that. More sophisticated systems, more powerful systems will give you, if-then rules and different preferences to determine routing groups based on, really any data point that might make sense for your business. So an example would be, in most cases, always go to my warehouse. And then when we're out, go to this dropshipper's warehouse. If you've got multiple dropshippers, you could say, well, once my warehouse is out, look across these dropshippers, find which one's the cheapest based on shipping, based on the item cost, right? So there's a little bit more complexity there. In general, right at the gate, you could just say, I don't care if it's my warehouse, my dropshipper, wherever. I want to look at proximity to the customer. That's all I care about. I care about getting them it quicker. I'm going to assume it's cheaper, right? And you can set that up. And, in our system, you could kind of go through a rule set of check cheap, how cost effective it is, how close it is, and then hit preference after. So a lot of different things you can do there once you have that very critical mapping done. If you're dealing with a lot of products, you have to use a system that will automatically look for this mapping by UPC or whatever common identifier you might have. If you have less, smaller catalog, sometimes you can do this manually as well and just, map together products. But this is a game changer once you get to high volume and can save you a ton of money if you're, and really, impress your customers with quicker shipping, things like that. If you're able to route intelligently as orders come in. So we talked on the last one, just to kind of step back, this is processing, right? Automating the processing between your system and the supplier, right? Once you made a decision on where it should go, this next stage is automating the decision on where it should go and not having to log into your system and say, okay, I'm out of stock, request dropship, right? That happens for you automatically. The PO is automatically generated and then automatically processed from the previous stage. So that's really, truly from an order perspective. If you have overlap, you have multiple decisions that need to be made, this is the first time you're hitting true full automation from an ordering and shipment tracking perspective, right? Splitting the order up to multiple POs, things like that. And then it's worth noting that most people that we see make a switch to Flxpoint at this stage to get to this stage. This is usually a big hurdle where you have to typically change your methods and your software. And it's, like I said, it's an investment in time, money. But once you're able to do it, if you have enough orders that have to go through this decision tree, it can save you a ton of money and really improve customer satisfaction. So, from the other side, rule-based, we just did rule-based order management, right? Routing to your supply chain. Now we're doing rule-based listing management, which is pushing up to your sales channels. So like I said, this isn't specific necessarily to dropship, but it does play a big piece in dropship in that, if you have a lot of data that you don't control, like costs and inventory and things like that, getting it from left to right, as we describe a lot of times here at Flxpoint, getting it from left to right, from your supply chain up to your sales channel, automating that can be huge, especially as new distributors and new brands, or, mostly distributors have new products that show up consistently that are available for the first time. And even if you've got a brand that's pretty active in adding new products. So with that, typically what we see in a non-automated way is your supplier emails you, says, hey, here's our new fall line of products. We've got 25 new SKUs, whatever it might be, 100, and you get a spreadsheet of those and you manually start adding those to your website. It depends on your supplier once again, but if you're able to connect directly with their Shopify store via like an API integration, and as products get added to their store, it automatically pulls into your system. Or just in general, if they're sending you new products in just the feed file constantly, automating that from the left-hand side, from the feed that you're pulling it into your system and then pushing it up to your sales channel. That's the ideal listing management that is truly automated. On top of that, if you've got multiple channels, you can't just automate that push up to your channel each time. You might need to, change the pricing based on if you're selling on Amazon versus you're selling on Shopify. You might have a different markup. You might need to factor in, Amazon fees, whatever it might be. You might not want to sell dropship products on Amazon. You might want to just sell your own warehoused items on Amazon because they've got very strict, shipping policies. So, maybe that's as well. So you want to automate, the ingestion of the new products and the new product data and all of that syncing side, but you want to have rules in place to make sure that you only list to certain channels those new products that show up. That's another piece of automation. And then just in general, right? Like as you go into a multi-channel strategy, almost everyone we see that starts with a single channel, they will start by just adding their products directly to a channel. They will update the titles, change the descriptions, do all the stuff that you want to do to make sure that you have unique product titles and descriptions and something that fits your brand. But they do it on that channel. And if they want to expand to another store that's, slightly positioned differently, or they want to start selling on different channels as well, if you don't have it in one central kind of PIM to some extent, or at least any kind of multi-channel management kind of central hub, then you're going to have to manually go and change things in each spot. So that's another side of automation, is having the product data in one central location, be able to search by that product data, search by the manufacturer of the product, search by, different categories, having a central category structure in one central spot. That's kind of why I say listing management, right? More so than automation. you're automating a lot of the pushing and creation of the new listings and the syncing of it, but just helping automate your workflows. That could be just having all the product data in one central location that you can easily search, for everything in this X category, or from this X brand, whatever it might be. So just having that data, common theme. We'll talk about it more, especially as we wrap up with the 7th stage. But having that data in one central location is very critical for what we call true automation. One of the toughest stages, and why it's the last here before true full automation, is the accounting reporting automation. And what we're typically talking about when we say accounting, sure, syncing with QuickBooks or syncing with your ERP, that's very doable, right? You can hire a developer, or you can have these pre-built integrations to your automation software that will automatically mirror and have a two-way sync. That's not usually the hardest part. It's definitely a part of it, right? And if you're on an ERP, that might be easier said than done. But the big thing here is actually just automating. If you're in a traditional retail type workflow where you're sending purchase orders and you're getting back invoices, and then you move to this dropship model where you're sending dozens, hundreds of purchase orders, and then you're getting back dozens, hundreds of 810 in the EDI version, but invoices, then you're gonna need to find a way on how to reconcile. I want to go buy this item for $10, but my cost, what I understand, should have been $10. They're invoicing me now at $9 or $11 or whatever it might be. I need to make sure that reconciles, and that's exactly what I was expecting. At the same token, that's probably a little bit less of a scenario where you're getting priced incorrectly, but it does happen, and we see, and that's why we have alerts in place to help you kind of reconcile that. But then also on top of that is the shipping cost. The shipping cost is some of the hardest stuff or hardest data point, I should say, to make sure you get the accurate cost if you're shipping off of their account. So a lot of times you work with a supplier that might say, hey, we've got great rates, and you're going to want to ship off our account. Or they might say, hey, that's how we make our money. We put a margin on the shipping. We give you as much as we can on the item, and you need to ship off our account. Whatever it might be, you might have your hands tied in some cases where you have to ship off their account. And that way, and they are going to invoice you for that shipping cost after the fact, right? Not every single supplier is going to give you flat rate shipping. You can build in, okay, I know it's going to cost me $5. So let me build in that $5 margin, $5 cost into my margin. That's not always going to be the case. So just getting that data, that lagging indicator, shipping costs can be tough. But once you are able to get it, and if you're in a position like that, then that's really the true ability to become automated and have all the data in the right spot to be able to make these decisions, right? Profitability is going to be key. If you don't know if you're making money on a certain item from a certain sales channel, from a certain supplier in general, then you're never going to be able to scale your business. So automating that. Lastly, the thing is EDI, right? If you're doing EDI, the 810 invoice is fairly common. It's fairly simple for your supplier to provide you. So it's usually not a big hang up there. Where the biggest hang up is if you're not doing EDI with your supplier, and they, you're set up from an email perspective, whatever it might be. A lot of these supplier setups, there's two scenarios. One, they do EDI and they provide invoices like that, and that's how they get them to you. So if you're not doing it, then you're kind of SOL. If you're not doing EDI, or if they don't do EDI in general, they just might not have a great system in place to get you invoices, right? They just might just say like, hey, you come and download them from our portal, right? That's how we provide invoices. When we first started another one of our businesses that was, actually just running an e-commerce business to really get a feel for the product we're building and making sure it fits the needs, we used to get shipped actual physical invoices, like dozens and dozens a day from our supplier. They wouldn't even send an email. They would ship us like printouts. It was wild. But so once again, and this one more so than others, it depends on your supplier and they might not be equipped to do it. The most common one I see is emails back from the supplier with an attached PDF. And they say, here's your invoice. They're used to traditional wholesale, only having to send this PDF email once a week, once a month, once a quarter, whatever it might be. They're not used to constant dropship POs coming in, and they haven't really evolved their process yet. So if that's the case, you're going to have to, we, Flxpoint, just as an example, will accept in, CSV files and things like that, and automatically be able to reconcile invoices to POs for you. If it's a PDF, we have to work with a partner but we do have a partner that we work with that will convert the PDF into a file format we can accept, and then automate it back in right directly off that email. But you're going to have to find a system that does something like that if you want to automate it. Otherwise, what you'll do is you'll put someone manually, in between that flow, and they'll have to manually type in your invoices, which we see is fairly common. And then so profitability in your system is huge. Checking and making sure you're not getting charged different item costs than what you put on the PO and what you were expecting is a big added advantage to automating this as well. And then, even be able to pull from your warehouse now, like that's an easy part, pulling what we call fulfillment requests, right? Similar flow to a PO and an invoice back, but you can even kind of automate that by just knowing your COGS within your warehouse. That's a little bit easier. It's really the dropship side with the invoices that makes it tough. So once you have this is the last typical missing piece in the data side of things. This is what it takes to get to true automation. You need to know your costs, right? And when you dropship, like I said, it can be easier than some scenarios and others. But if you don't know your shipping costs, or that you don't feel confident in the item costs as they change frequently in your supplier, whatever it might be, you're not going to be able to hit true automation. But once you've gone through all 6 of these stages, kind of progressed from them, right? Left the email ordering to now you're placing orders over EDI to, and now pulling in invoices, all of that, you can finally hit true automation, which is be able to make decisions off the data you have. So you've automated all your flows, but be able to set yourself apart really from the competition by putting in automation rules to take into account your average shipping costs, your item costs, return rates, fulfillment rates, kind of vendor scorecarding in general, looking across multiple sources, making a determination based on that data on who you want to fulfill from, and then be able to list appropriately on different channels based on different sales data, right? So really it's more of a data-driven type world today, honestly, in all industries. Retail is no exception. And, as you go more online in retail with e-commerce and the sales there, you're going to want to leverage this data more and more. And that's what can get you to that true automation piece. But that is it. That is the 7 stages of dropship automation. Hope you guys found that helpful. Hope you could kind of find yourself in which stage you are currently. We love to kind of talk automation. We've been doing it for a really long time. We love to talk dropship. We're a strong believer in dropship, in the fulfillment model, and the need to automate it really for it to work. So if you want to learn more about dropship and automation in general and just e-commerce tips and tricks, YouTube, subscribe. If you're watching on YouTube, you can also contact us, flexpoint.com/contact, or just head to the website. Email us at info@flexpoint.com. We're happy to like I said, we love dropship. We love e-commerce automation. Happy to just talk about it, whether you're interested in moving your platform or not. Always here to help. So thanks again, guys. Hope you liked it and appreciate it. Thanks.